Today I'm going to show you how I set up an email sequence to make the most out of all of the email list members that I have collected over the years. My email list makes me a ton of money every year, and I use Kajabi to do all my emailing, so I'm going to show you how I set it up in there and how I think about email sequences overall. So what exactly is a sequence? When you are in Kajabi, in your marketing email campaign section, then when you click a new email campaign, you have a broadcast or a sequence. So a broadcast is basically just an email, and then a sequence is a series of emails, and they are triggered by some kind of automation. There's so many different options here. Let's just type in intro sequence test as our title. So they're going to have templates here that you can use. I'm going to show you actually everything with the classic editor because I think that they get better results than a lot of these kind of marketing looking templates, but that's not to say that you can't use them if you find any of them working well for your brand. My brand is very casual and authentic, so just sending a text email works pretty well. Every time you set up a new sequence, you can set it to a certain day after the sequence starts. And if you want it to send immediately when the sequence starts, you will change this to day 0. If you want to send it 1 day later, you can change it to 1 day later. And you can choose exactly what time it's going to send. So all of these emails will either send, if you want them all to come at 1 p.m. or if you want to vary them, you can do that as well. I love that you can have an internal title, so that's just what you want in case there's a goal of this email or a specific word used to describe your product you don't use publicly. And then you can just type your subject and type your email in here as usual. I'll show you what that looks like in a second, but first I want to show you the options for email sequences so you understand what these look like in your business. First, you're going to have a subscribe trigger. So what happens in order for someone to start getting this email sequence? And those can be all kinds of things. So it can be when they complete a little quiz or get a certificate. That's a Kajabi specific feature. If you have like tests or things in one of your products, a specific tag is added or removed. So for instance, if they finish up a class, you could either send them a certificate or you could add a tag that says, hey, they finished this class. Any of those could be subscribe triggers. They also can trigger by clicking a link in an email broadcast. So for instance, they want to be on the wait list for your next course. When they click that link, you can have them sign up for this waitlist sequence that they're going to get. If they complete a different sequence, click something, if they register for an event, form submission is a good one. So this one that we're going to do today is an intro sequence. This is basically everyone who fills out my general footer form on my website is going to be entered into this intro sequence. So we'll use that as our subscribe trigger. And here are some other options. For instance, when the offer is purchased, you could send them a nurture sequence about how to best use the product that they just purchased. So I'll do the form is submitted, and I have all of these different forms. We will just click main footer, and then we'll subscribe them to this email sequence. Another great thing you can do in Kajabi here is add a condition. So for instance, if the client is already subscribed to something, if they have previously been on this list, if they have previously visited a page on your website in the last 2 days, etc. A great example of this is if they fill out my footer form, but they've already subscribed to some of my other lists, they've already gotten some of these emails because they bought a different offer and they just never subscribed to our footer form. So that's just a good example. There's so many different filters here. You can even do like address contains, so you can not send something to a person who lives in California, for instance, if the product is not available for them in California. We also have some custom field filters. So I've done some webinars where they could submit their question, and if their question contained the word pricing, for instance, I could remove them from this particular sequence if I wanted to. So lots of good conditions there. You can also use unsubscribe triggers, which are at their core pretty much the same as the subscribe triggers, but that's going to take them out of the sequence. A great example for this is if I'm using a launch sequence or a waitlist sequence. If they buy the product, I don't want them to then get a bunch of the sales emails, so I will unsubscribe them when they buy that product. Kajabi does a lot of things outside of emails, which helps because it gives you more of those subscribe and unsubscribe triggers. Like when they buy a product or something, it's all connected, so you can move people in and out of the sequences in very customized ways. Also, if you do want to try Kajabi, I'm going to put my link in the description. Throughout the month of April, they have a really good deal where you can get 3 months for, I think, $99. So definitely check out that link. Okay, so now we know like how this works and what the options are. How do we think about these sequences so that we're using them to make the most money? Now, this is an example of a document that has a bunch of sequences in it. I like to just kind of write everything here in Google Doc, and then I will have my assistant schedule everything in or create the actual sequences in Kajabi with all of the triggers. And I think this is a great way to just focus on what you're doing. So first what we did was I drew out, this was on my iPad, it's just an image. I drew out exactly where I wanted everyone to go from different places. And then say like if they wanted to leave this sequence because they're too advanced and they click a link, they go over here to this additional sequence over here. So if you need to draw it out, that's always really helpful for me, or you could use like a flowchart generator. The question is always like if they do what we want them to do, or if they don't, where do they go? So for instance, this is FS2S. If they do buy from start to sweep, or if they don't buy from start to sweep, then what happens? And those are the questions you're always asking yourself after every step of this sequence. So what we establish for our intro sequence is we always have a goal, and the goal of this one is to get them into our membership called Stationery School. And the benefit of this and the stories that I kind of wrote that I knew I wanted to tell during the sequence. After we have our goal established, we're going to talk about how you get into and out of this sequence. So this is mainly when they fill out the main email list form from my website. There's a couple other places that we will manually dump people into the sequence, kind of our general sequence that people have opted into our emails, but they haven't really told us exactly what they're interested in. So we're going to give them this general intro sequence. Main thing is though, they're going to fill out that email list form. So we're going to set that as our subscribe trigger and then anything else. Sometimes we manually go in and add people to the sequence, which you can also do here in Kajabi. Then how do you get out of this sequence? So if you don't buy anything, then you're going to go to our core sequence, which is kind of where everybody eventually goes and has a lot of our stuff in it. Then if you do buy our beginner class, then you're going to go to the nurture sequence for that class, which will eventually take you through kind of the buying journey of your beginner. And now here's some other things that you might be interested in. Then if you buy our membership, Stationery School, then you're going to go into that nurture sequence, which kind of does the same thing, but less of a beginner method. So we have 3 different ways that you can exit from the sequence, and those are what we'll set as our unsubscribe triggers. As you can see, all of these unsubscribe triggers send people to a new sequence. This is because I want to basically keep people in, and if they buy something, that tells me where they're at in their business, and I can put them somewhere along the buying journey to a point where they might buy additional things from me. They might sign up for certain products that we do. They might be interested in a pricing class because they've indicated interest in that kind of thing. So I'm going to keep those sequences going. You don't have to send people to an additional sequence as they leave this sequence, though. You can just remove them from the list. For instance, if it's a one-time webinar and that's the only thing you think they're interested in, I would argue that it potentially is not. But you can just remove them and they won't get any emails in the future. For instance, we have our general follow-up sequence, and that's kind of where everyone ends up if they have not made any purchases throughout all these other different sequences. And once they get to the end of that, we consider them kind of a dead lead, and we'll continue to send them like new things that come out, like our general announcement emails, but we're not going to keep advertising a bunch of random stuff that we've prepared because we kind of have taken them through the full buyer journey and they have opted out of buying everything, which is totally fine, but we don't want those people to just continue to get a bunch of repetitive emails. Now, what goes into the sequence? This can be so many different things. Like a nurture sequence after they've bought a product is going to be very different than this intro sequence, or if they've opted in for a waitlist or certain topic, that's going to be very different than this intro sequence as well. This is a generic sequence that they're going to get opted into just by saying, hey, we're interested in your emails. So I can assume they're slightly interested in stationery design or creative businesses in general. They might have found me through talking about client management. They might have found me through talking about affiliate sales. They might have found me through Adobe Illustrator class. They might have found me through a lot of different ways. They also could potentially be a wedding planner or a potential client that's interested in getting invitations. I don't typically cater my emails specifically to those people, but it's okay if you have a small subset of people signing up that you're not really catering to, and eventually they'll unsubscribe, but they're probably not going to buy over and over and over again from me anyway. So if they are interested in purchasing invitations, they're already in the sequence, they've already done what they need to do, and it's okay if they unsubscribe. So how I would plan this out is approximately how many emails you want in this sequence, what you want the overall goal of this sequence to be. For us, we have this to be Stationery School, and we've got 5 emails here that we hope to get them there. The last one, as you can see, is let's do it. This is our most actionable direct email, and we are waiting approximately like 3 to 4 days between all of these emails, and this sequence lasts for approximately 2 weeks, so 14 days. And I'm gonna always put in day 0, day 3, day 7, or sometimes I'll put like +4, and then my assistant has to do that math to see what day it is. That just means +4 from the previous email. So this is when they are going to get all of these emails. We're going to start with hey, hi, hello. This one is brand new, kind of introducing myself, explaining what you're going to see on this list, and then linking just some generic resources. We're always going to add something in our PS as much as possible. In this case, we want to make sure that they are on our list. That's our first objective for our email sequence, is to make sure they're not missing them or going to spam. So overall, the health of our email list is going to improve our deliverability rates for everyone. So what we'll do is just say, reply this email. You can just say, got it. And I always reply back to them and say something kind of personal if I can. Just tell them that I'm glad they're there, etc. If they tell me their favorite color, I will tell them my favorite color back, which, as we all know, is yellow. This is going to ensure that we don't go to spam. So that's a really good objective for your first email, is just get them to reply. Something you might notice is we have this first name field here. This is a merge field that's going to automatically fill in with their first name. If they don't have a first name coded into your system, then you want to make sure that it's something generic. So they will get just a blank here. So it'll just say, hey, hi, hello, which is totally fine. If it doesn't have a name, don't put something that specifically has to have a name there, because some people will not. Day 3, we're going to say, do you know what you're doing? And this is basically talking about getting into our membership, your beginner class if you're not sure what you're doing, etc. 7, what printer do you use? So what I'm doing in this intro sequence is going through some of the really common questions that I get, especially from beginners, because I do think that most of the people filling out that main footer are going to be beginning stationery designers. And as we gather data on our sequences, you'll always have a report in here where you can see when people unsubscribed, how many emails there were, how the health of your deliverability is, like bouncing and getting delivered, etc. You can see what people are clicking on, what emails made them unsubscribe, etc. So you can continue to adjust these. And what's cool about having it in a sequence versus just sending these as individual emails is that it will update automatically. So if we have this day 3 email and we decide we don't like it because it's not doing well, we can just replace it with something different, and anyone who's already in the sequence will just automatically start getting that new day 3 email instead of the old one. So what we're doing here is kind of running through our common things. The most common question I get in this business is, what printer do you use? I have found a way to monetize that a little bit by having affiliate partnerships with my favorite printers, also with Amazon Shop, linking the printers that I do have. So we're going to give them all that information. We have an additional blog post with follow-up printing issues, etc. And then we have a little PS to join our Start to Suite to get your print and paper vendor list here. Another super common question I get is just how to start your business, how to make it legit, what licenses you need, etc. So that's something that we're covering in this email, linking out to another video as well. Not every single email is a direct sales pitch, but they're all going to link to something that we offer, whether that is a free resource like a video on YouTube or a blog post, or something that is paid like one of our courses. And then on day 14, they've been hearing from me for 2 weeks. We've been hanging out for a couple weeks now. I hope you've learned a few things. I've given them some things for free. I haven't pitched them too crazy hard yet. And then I'm going to pitch them kind of hard for Stationery School here, because that was the overall goal of this piece. I'm giving them an option, if they're brand new, to go into From Start to Suite, which is our beginner class, just because since they filled out the footer, I don't exactly know where they are in their business. So when you are answering these questions about your sequences, first thing, what is the overall goal of this sequence? How do you get into and out of it? Is there anyone that you definitely don't want getting this sequence, or you want to make sure is removed after a certain point? And then what can we do? I would say start with about a 2 to 3 week sequence of 5 or 6 emails in that time. We don't want to overwhelm people and have them be annoyed that they're getting information from us. We want them to see these as developing relationships, starting to get comfortable seeing me in their inbox and also reading those emails. Super helpful to develop something that makes them reply back, because that's just going to give you a positive check from their inbox. And then when you get to that goal at the very end, it's okay to do a hard pitch because you have already given them a lot of information, shown that you're useful. You don't necessarily have to do that for 2 weeks before doing a hard pitch. You can come out of the gate with a hard pitch if you want. We have some soft pitches throughout the entire series. There's a lot of different places where people can do things that will get us paid, whether that's buying something, watching a YouTube video, etc. And then after the end of this sequence, that's the question of where do we want them to go? If they did buy the thing, where do they go from there? If they did not buy the thing, what's the next step on their buying journey? Maybe why didn't they buy the thing? Because they're not ready. They're not in the right place of their business. They're too beginner, they're too advanced, etc. If you answer these questions, you can figure out what's next for them on their buying journey, and you can send them to the right place. So I wouldn't focus on building everything out at once. I would focus on establishing what the sequence looks like, and then we can go in and basically just copy and paste directly into Kajabi, which is really easy. So I'm just going to grab this email and I'll show you how we do that. We have day 1 here. And as we can see, this is actually day 0. We want them to get this right when they sign up because they just signed up. We want them to understand what they're signing up for and who they are talking to. And our subject is, hey, hi, hello. Paste this in. Kajabi has a lot of options here where you can put a link, you can add a file or a button to download something, you can add an attachment to the email, you can upload an image. Personalized features are first name, last name, email. I mean, first name is mainly the one you're going to use, but if you use some of those custom ones, like what kind of business are you in, or submit your question, you can put, hey, you asked this question, you know, hope you come to the webinar to see it answered, etc. We have that ready to go. We're going to save it in here. And then you can send a test email to any email address. You can do that to yourself or someone else. You can also preview what it's going to look like in the browser. I keep my emails super duper simple here, and I don't really add a lot of images, color headers, etc., but you absolutely can. If you want to do more of that, I'd recommend switching to this visual editor here because it's going to make that part a little bit easier, but I mostly do text emails and they're quite successful. So we'll save that, and then we can go back to our test sequence and then add a new email. Again, we'll just use the classic editor. Let's see. The next email we have is day 3, and it's called, do you know what you're doing? A bit aggressive, but I think it will get people to open the email. All right, we do that, save it, it's ready to go. So now we have our intro sequence with 2 emails in it. Okay, and this is our actual email sequence and how we've gone through. I just want to show you what you're going to get as a report here. So we have 370 people who have subscribed to this. We have 6 subscribe triggers at this point. So we have some things like they finish out a different sequence, they submitted the default form, a different one that's main footer, they purchased one of our little freebie classes, and then we have our unsubscribe triggers, which is when they complete the sequence. They purchase any of these offers, which is just our beginner class and our membership that we talked about. So basically the same things we talked about. We've added a few subscribe triggers as we've grown. And then you can see how many of these have been sent and how many people have opened, clicked, unsubscribed, etc. So you do have a few people who have unsubscribed after the 2nd email and a few people who've unsubscribed after the 5th email, but that is, we still have 9% clicked, and that's our most hard pitch. So we definitely want to keep something like that in there. And we can pay attention to, like, this one has the highest click rate. It's a free course, so that kind of makes sense. And our open rate is pretty established throughout. We're obviously going to get more people opening the first one because they just subscribed, they want to learn what's going on, but we do have a 62% open rate even on our final piece, which is extremely high. So absolutely love these stats here, but if we were seeing something we didn't like or that didn't make sense, we could always change that. And one cool thing about Kajabi is you have this report which connects it to other things in your business, so you can actually see how much direct revenue has come through. We've had one sale of our larger course since we redid this sequence very recently. So previously didn't have any direct links that led to revenue, which was kind of silly for us. So we're going to keep an eye on this. And then this is the information that we will investigate over review meetings about how the different funnels and sequences are working. So things that we like to see are that high open rate, low unsubscribe rate, low bounce rate. That first email is really helping with that. And then of course this net revenue number we want to keep growing as well. Okay, now this was a slightly longer video, but I hope it was helpful to see how we think about sequences and what you can do with sequences. We have a lot up in here, the intro, and then they go into the core, which is what every single person gets no matter how they get in there. We have nurture sequences for our two main products. We have follow-up, a more advanced sequence if someone indicates that they are more advanced in their business. And then general follow-up is kind of like they have not bit on any of the offers so far. So we're going to try them on some of our lower ticket offers if they're interested in, ask them some questions, figure out what we can do, or maybe start investigating those people for what kind of products we can offer that they are interested in. Why are they not, purchasing any of these things that we've sent them through, and what are the decisions that they're making for their business. So I definitely recommend starting by mapping out your entire client journey, and then thinking about your sequences with goals in mind of how are they getting into the sequence, what are the ways that I'm already attracting a lot of clients, where are they coming, if I already have an email list, where are those people coming from, and then how can I direct them through the sequence in a way that's going to resonate with them and where they are at in their life or business, depending on who you're selling to, and how you can encourage them to kind of match up with the right products at the right time, because that's how you're going to get more sales in your business and help more people. Okay, let me know what questions you have. I did all of this in Kajabi, which is my system because it contains all of our products, our offer information. You can also do your website, you can do webinars, event registration, digital downloads now, like a lot of really cool things in here. And your sequences are going to connect to all of that. So you don't have to use Zapier, you don't have to do anything manually. You just have to get familiar with what those different subscribe and unsubscribe triggers can be. And you'll have all of their email as well as purchase history and information here that you can use to segment these sequences. If you think you might want to use Kajabi, definitely check out my link because it's going to give you the latest offers and whatever their best deal is, including right now they're running 3 months for only $99, which is a huge deal. Let me know what you think and what other questions I can answer about running your creative business.